The planet had no proper name anymore, its designation once a string of letters and numbers. Etched into star charts, had been stripped down by time, forgotten by the civilizations that catalogued it, overwritten by newer discoveries, brighter worlds, better bets. What remained was a dead sphere of ochre stone and blackened ice. Turning slowly beneath a red dwarf that no longer bothered pretending to be young, wind dragged itself, crossed the plains like an exhausted animal, not howling, never dramatic, but scraping, whispering, carrying grains of silica that had been ground down for millions of years and still hadn't learned when to stop. The sky was a bruised gradient of rust and violet, thick with dust that filtered the light into something dim and funereal. A lone figure moved through it. His suit was old. Not antique older than that. It had been repaired so many times that almost none of the original material remained. Panels were mismatched, polymer seals hand recast, joints reinforced with alloys that hadn't existed when the suit had first rolled off a fabrication line. The visor was scratched, clouded in places where micrometeorites had kissed it too closely. A faint reflection stared back at him when the light hit right. A man with deep-set eyes, lines carved by time and radiation, hair gone silver, not by fashion but by exposure and years. He walked carefully, conserving energy, each step measured. The gravity here was a little heavier than Earth's standard, just enough to make every kilometer feel earned. His name was Elias Rourke. Once, that name had meant something. Now, it was just what he told himself in the quiet moments. When the suit's internal hum was the only proof he still existed, he had been alone for a very long time. Not the poetic kind of alone that philosophers wrote about, or the romantic solitude explorers claimed to enjoy. This was the grinding, cumulative isolation that stripped a person down to essentials. No mirrors, no crowds, no voices except his own, and the ghosts that memory insisted on replaying when silence grew too thick. The outpost behind him, outpost Helios 9, was a skeleton now. A scattering of pressure domes collapsed under centuries of neglect, their interiors long since vented to vacuum. He hadn't bothered sealing them back up. There was no one left to protect the air for. He had stayed longer than he should have. He always did. Elias paused at the crest of a ridge, adjusting the power flow in his suit. The horizon stretched endlessly, broken only by jagged basalt spires and the faint silhouette of something angular far in the distance, too geometric to be natural. He had noticed it days ago at first. He thought it was a trick of light. This planet was good at that. Dust storms could sketch cities into the sky, only to erase them with the next gust. But this shape didn't move. It didn't blur. It remained fixed, patient, waiting. A structure impossible. The records were right. This world had been marked sterile long before his people arrived. No indigenous life. No precursor ruins. No signs of alien intervention. That was why humanity had chosen it as a long-term research site centuries ago. Clean variables. Untouched ground. Which meant one of two things. Either the records were wrong, or someone had been very good at hiding. The signal had come the night before. Elias had been half asleep in his bunk. The soft vibration of the outpost's failing reactor thrumming through the floor when the CUM unit crackled to life. Not a distress call. Not a human frequency. A narrowband transmission riding a carrier wave so old and precise that his systems hadn't recognized it at first. He had sat up slowly, heart pounding in a way it hadn't in decades. The display had filled with noise, static resolving into a pattern that repeated every 12 seconds. 3 pulses. A pause. 1 longer pulse. Not random. Intentional. "Hello?" he had whispered, feeling foolish even as the word left his mouth. No response. Just the signal. Patient. Unchanging. He hadn't slept after that. He had packed supplies, checked his suit seals twice, and left Helios 9 behind without looking back. Now standing on the ridge, staring at the structure silhouetted against the bruised sky, he felt something unfamiliar tightening in his chest. anticipation, fear, hope, sharp enough to hurt. The journey took 2 more days. The terrain grew harsher as he approached. The ground fractured into knife-edged shards of obsidian that threatened to shred his boots if he misstepped. The wind picked up, carrying with it an electromagnetic hiss that crawled along his suit like static electricity. He rationed water, recycled air, ignored the ache in his joints that no amount of nanomedicine could fully erase anymore as he walked. His mind wandered as it always did to Earth, not the Earth that existed now. If it existed at all, but the one he remembered from archived footage and secondhand stories: blue oceans, green forests, a sky that didn't look angry all the time. Humanity had left that Earth behind in stages, first with hope, then with desperation, and finally with something close to shame. They had spread across the stars, built cities under alien suns, learned to adapt. They had also learned to change. Elias had refused. When the augmentation programs began, when people started editing themselves for longevity, resilience, adaptation, he had declined. Not out of fear. Out of stubbornness, he had wanted to stay human, flesh that aged, bones that ached, a lifespan with an end. At the time, it had felt like a statement. Now, it felt like a sentence. The structure rose from the plain like a monolith, its surface smooth and dark, untouched by erosion. No seams, no visible entrances. It absorbed light rather than reflecting it. A void cut into the landscape. Elias circled it slowly, scanning with every sensor he had. Energy readings spiked as he approached, subtle but undeniable. The signal origin was here. "All right," he muttered. "I'm listening, dear VIB." Right. Not sound pressure, a low-frequency resonance that bypassed his ears and settled directly into his bones. The surface of the structure rippled just once, like water disturbed by a dropped stone. Then a line appeared, a door revealing itself not by opening, but by deciding to exist. Elias hesitated. He thought of all the empty places he had explored, all the ruins that promised answers and delivered only echoes. He thought of the long years ahead, short by galactic standards, but long enough to feel endless when spent alone. He stepped forward. The door parted without a sound. Inside, the air was warm, not recycled, not stale. Alive, in a way his suit immediately struggled to categorize. He sealed it anyway, trusting nothing. The corridor beyond was softly lit, walls curving in ways that made depth perception unreliable. The material was unfamiliar, neither metal nor stone, but something grown, perhaps, or assembled at a scale beyond human manufacturing. His footsteps echoed, but the sound didn't behave properly. It returned delayed, stretched, as if the space itself were thinking before answering. Rooms branched off the main passage. He explored slowly, methodically, recording everything. He found consoles that responded to his presence with soft glows. Holographic displays flickered to life, projecting symbols that rearranged themselves when he looked directly at them. And then he found the artifacts, personal items, a cracked mug, a child's toy, simple, geometric, unmistakably human in its design philosophy. A jacket hung carefully on a stand, its fabric faded but intact. His breath caught. "These were ours," he whispered, "but newer, not ancient, not abandoned for centuries." Recent footsteps sounded behind him. Elias spun, heart slamming into his ribs, hand flying to the emergency cutter at his belt. She stood in the doorway, tall, slender. Her posture was effortless, balanced in a way that suggested muscles reinforced beyond natural limits. Her skin carried a faint iridescence, like light refracted through oil on water. Her eyes were too bright, pupils sharp and faceted, reflecting more wavelengths than human eyes ever could. She wore no suit, no helmet, just a simple garment that clung to her frame, its surface shifting subtly as if alive. She looked at him, like one might look at a fossil that had learned to walk. "You're late," she said. Her voice was calm, controlled, accented. in a way that didn't map cleanly to any language Elias knew. Yet somehow his brain understood it anyway. He swallowed. I didn't know anyone was left. She stepped closer, her presence pressed against him, not physically, but conceptually. Like standing too near a powerful magnetic field. You're still. Like this, she said, eyes tracing the lines of his face, the sag of gravity on his skin. Unmodified. Human, he replied. A little defensively. Her hand moved faster than he could track. The slap echoed through the chamber. Sharp and final. His head snapped to the side, pain blooming across his cheek. His suit absorbed most of the impact, but not the humiliation. She didn't look angry. She looked disappointed. That she said evenly, "Is for being mortal." Elias stared at her, stunned, slowly, painfully. He turned back to face her. Blood trickled from his lip. He wiped it away with a gloved thumb, then smiled. A real smile. Tired, crooked, defiant. Then he said, meeting her impossible gaze, "You're gonna love my next trick." Her eyes narrowed. "Explain." Elias reached into his suit and pulled out a small device no larger than a coin. It hummed softly, its surface etched with symbols that looked suspiciously like the ones decorating the walls around them. "I found your backups." "Ah," he said. "Your logs. Your failsafes. This place. It isn't just a shelter." Recognition flickered across her face. "You shouldn't have access to that." "I shouldn't," he agreed. "But I do." He took a breath. "This facility was built by humans who chose differently than you. They didn't ascend. They didn't rewrite themselves. They tried to preserve humanity exactly as it was. Baseline, finite, fragile." Her expression hardened. "They failed," Elias countered softly. "Just not the way you wanted." Silence stretched between them. Finally, she spoke. "We became more so we wouldn't disappear. And in doing that," he said, "you left everyone else behind." She looked away. For the first time, she seemed tired. "You don't understand what it's like," she said, "to watch centuries pass in the span of a breath. To outlive everyone you've ever known." Elias laughed quietly. "I do," he said. "I really do." They stood there, two relics of different philosophies, surrounded by the quiet hum of a machine that had been waiting for exactly this conversation. Outside, the red dwarf continued to burn. Inside, humanity faced itself mortal and infinite, stubborn and transformed, finally forced to decide what survival truly meant. And somewhere deep within the structure, a signal began to change, not a beacon anymore, a reply. The universe had never cared how humans survived, only that they chose to. And this time, the choice would echo farther than any signal ever had.